Okay.
Got it.
All right. So this is being recorded, and this is class 4, and this class is a continuation.
That's
If you
great.
could, if you could somewhat mute your phones, your speaker system. So this is a continuation of the discussion we had on Manet and Degas. And so the idea is I thought to choose two other artists in which there was a combination of an interest in the figure and an interest in tradition and an interest in some sort of modern approach or modernist approach. So I was trying to think of which two artists that would relate, and especially with images of the figure, especially the nude. So I thought of Bonnard and Sheila. So next week, you could use Manet or Degas or Bonnard or Sheila, however you want. Um, and you have to send me two images of of one of those artists and another one. So Bonnard, Pierre Bonnard, lives from 1867 to amazingly 1947. And Bonnard is a colorist, a very enigmatic and poetic artist. Bonnard, Bonnard. He uses highly saturated color. If you saw Bonnard's work reproduced in black and white, it would not look as impressive. It needs to be reproduced in color. There are very few artists where you could say that. Okay, most artists, their reproductions would look fine in black and white, but Bonnard, it really loses. I think another artist that you would say the same thing of would be Monet. Okay, if you saw Monet in black and white, it would really decline. Um, his work is very well composed. It seems offhand, but the compositions are terrific. His color is usually high key. He could be considered a post-impressionist. So, in a sense, this group of artists, Seurat, Van Gogh, Gauguin, Bonnard, were influenced by Impressionism, but then went in different directions. As with the other two artists, this is interesting. As with the other two artists, he studied to be a lawyer. And I think he didn't pass, didn't um, continue, but I think his family wanted him to be a lawyer. So this is curious. You have now three artists who whose family were between middle class and very well to do. His work is very influenced by Japanese art. And that I forgot to go into that last time with Manet and Degas. That would be the same. And I think that Japanese art it was opened up to the West in this period of time, like mid 1800s, 1850, 1860, 1870 on. So some of the compositions are connected with a kind of Japanese way of designing things. I took this quote out of Wikipedia. I thought it was interesting. I don't think it's attributed to anyone, or at least I didn't see that. Bonnard did not paint from life, but rather drew his subject, sometimes photographing it as well, and made notes of the colors. He then painted the canvas in his studio from his notes. Quote, I have all my subjects at hand, he said. I go back and look at them. I take notes. Then I go home. And before I start painting, I dream. This is very, very interesting. So he didn't paint from life. I also remember reading something about Bonnard in which at the end of his day of painting, he took, he had the paintings unstretched and he taped them or nailed them into the wall because he didn't want to establish the rectangle. He just had unstretched canvases all around, hung on the wall. And I remember reading this. I thought this was quite funny, is that at the end of the day, he took the paint that was left on his palette and he went around to all the canvases and he took the paint and put it on every canvas. Okay. Now, so maybe his style is connected with thriftiness. Okay. So he wanted to save the paint or recycle the paint, and he just went around and put the paint back on all the canvases, which it strikes me as quite funny. I hope you would agree. Okay. So I'm going to show you some of Bonnard's pictures. See if I could do this. Okay. Hold on a second. Hold on. Hey, Renee. I can't do something. I got this on the back. Look, it's there, but I can't do anything with it. Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay, very sorry. This is really improvised. If you didn't come early, we had a problem with my computer, and so I'm using Renee's computer, and I'm using all of Renee's expertise here.
Isn't too much.
Now, so here's a picture of Bonnard and his painting setup, and he looks like he's mixing paint and preparing to paint. It's actually interesting to see what he looks like because he, I mean, he might be you might say that he was kind of nerdy looking, but his paintings are wonderfully romantic and poetic. Um, Okay, so this is a photograph of Bonnard. So this is painting Bonnard self-portrait. And you can see how much the color matters in these paintings. This is Bonnard is much older, but still the dominant quality is color. Very saturated color and very high key. So you can see in here that his work is very connected with Impressionism, but it's still different and it's still very poetic, very drenched in color.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Was he at any time, categorized or thought of as a fauve artist? Who around the beginning of the 20th century when that became kind of big. If I have my
No,
dates right.
I think he actually was categorized as a group called NABI, NABIS, but I am not familiar with that. But it could be post-impressionist or NABI, and I'm not familiar with the other people in that group. But let me continue.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks to you. The last painting and this one are quite large paintings, and I have to be more careful about making sure these images are super in focus. Um, I'm sorry about this. The focus could be much better. But, it does make me think that if you respond to an artist, you should look up their work on your computer and see other examples besides the one I'm giving.
I have a question also. One of the ways when I look at a painting that I know it's been Bonnard is that he has these very strong verticals that are almost unique to any other artist.
Well, I wouldn't pick that out as something to say. I mean, I think you might be right, actually, but that doesn't occur to me. Maybe you won't think the same after you see all the pictures. We'll see. We'll see. um, so the colors are very high key and very saturated, and the modeling on the figure is not really Renaissance modeling. This is some other way of depicting a figure. And I think that is why when you see this in black and white, it sort of doesn't have the oomph that it has in color. This is a smallish painting, and the way the color is applied here is really prototypical Bonnard. And there was an exhibit of his work, which I mentioned at the Aquavella Gallery. And I guess that exhibit stayed with me for a number of reasons, but it stayed with me. And I thought to make him the third artist in this group of four. So in his painting, he's bringing along is not just the subject, but the color and the application of paint. Now, this is the section that I'm particularly interested in terms of connecting and comparing to Manet and Degas. So Bonnard does a series of nudes, which are extremely striking. And I believe this one is at the National Gallery in London. I think the model for these nudes was his wife. And if I was guessing, I would say that she spent a lot of time with this. And he had a wonderful model, and he did many of these. So it struck me that this series connects with Degas, a few paintings of Manet, and definitely with Schiele. Okay. He does a number of paintings where you see a reflection in a mirror, and um, and they're really well composed. So you see reality in front of a mirror and reality reflected through a mirror. Again, I don't think it's the form that dominates here, it's the color. I think these are terrific compositions. The way the mirror reflects the room, the world, and they're after all also a series of images of the nude. The way this leg on the bottom is cut off, and actually even the way the pose exists, the main model is very Japanese in design. Okay, so it has to do with the way the rectangle is used and the cutting off points of the rectangle. This beautiful blue, lavender, violet on the left hand side or our side of the figure. Well, this is a stunning composition, and it would fit into this schema of images of the nude, but it's almost an image of an interior.
This is another example of the strong verticals.
Yes, you're absolutely right with this. With this, you're totally right.
With a lot of them, actually.
Yes, you're totally right. And this is also this way of cropping is very Japanese. In I don't know why, but I'd have to think about it. But it strikes me as very Japanese.
Can I ask what you mean by that exactly, if you can say?
Well, if you look at Japanese prints and screens, there's a way, this is 1800s, there's a way that they make use of composition, space, and rectangles. I don't want to go off in this direction. I want to stay with, but if you look at a bunch of, if you bring up on your computer Japanese art, 1800s prints, and then look at a bunch of them, I think you'll agree with me.
I mean,
yes.
the modern Degas and Manet was also influenced by the Japanese
yes.
Composition,
yes.
right?
Yes, I agree totally.
Now, were those prints that the Japanese did, were they of long ago, or were they their current?
I think what happened, I don't know the answer to that entirely. My hunch is that they were from the 1800s, but maybe a little bit before, within 100 years. But what happened, I believe, is that Japan was at kind of an isolated country. And in the mid 1800s, their trading and interaction with the West opened them up, so that in Paris, for instance, there were many prints that came that influenced artists in Paris. For instance, Van Gogh in particular. So I think it has to do with the interaction of the Japanese cultural world with the West beginning in the mid 1800s. But when the prints were done, I'm not sure. Now that I think of it, I think they were done earlier, like 100 years or 200 years before.
Does it relate at all to the patterning
yes.
that we see
yes.
as
yes.
well?
But I think more than the patterns, it relates to the rectangle and the way they're composed. That's my take. He does a series of paintings. Well, this whole thing, the way this is cropped, and the way it's designed, and the way the rectangle intersects reality, strikes me as very Japanese. He does a series of paintings of his wife bathing, and you really can't get a sense of these unless you see them in person. They are really striking. And I think there was an exhibit at the Museum of Modern Art, maybe in the 1990s, where they had a lot of these paintings. And it really was a revelation. Maybe in the 1990s or 1980s. It was a real revelation.
His colors sort of shimmer in person.
Yes. And that's lost in this type of reproduction. It feels a little dead compared to his painting. So you have to imagine the colors sort of twinkling, and it's a very unique use of paint and color.
I think it's interesting the way the figures are.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. And in the past few, you don't really see the entire figure. I mean, in the previous two, the legs were cut off. Here, the lower part of the body is cut off. Just kind of an interesting thing that he does.
Yes, very interesting.
Cool.
Very. I would say maybe this isn't the right word to use, but very hip, a very advanced perception of composition.
Well, it's a cropped photograph quality. I wonder if these were done possibly from photographs.
Well, that's what it said. That's the quote that I read.
Isn't that also a Japanese thing, to not have the complete body or have things cut off?
Yes. Let me just continue with this.
Can I just ask, is you think that decision to cut things off is to force the composition to be striking, to really notice those verticals, to really notice those rectangles? But I guess we don't
I
know.
think it's I think it's very daring. It's very audacious, and I think that I think hip, very audacious, and
It it's as if he's looking at the nude model or whoever it is, his wife, through a doorway, and those are frame. The doorway is cutting off part of the hair and
yes,
part of.
I totally agree with you. It, I mean, you could almost say that there's something voyeuristic about this.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, but it is beautifully composed, and it's a if you don't think about the compositions, they seem regular, but the ones that I've picked out are exceptional. Okay, and very smart, very interesting use of space. Um, Let me just continue. But even in this one, the way the nude is juxtaposed with the rest of this world, the rest of the scene. The paint is applied fairly thinly, but it's painted. So it's not flat, it's really painted. Now, this particular series is incredible, which is a series which shows his wife in this particular bathtub, and he does a few of these, and they are amazing to see in person. I mean, they just glitter, and so um, it's about the subject, which is a scene that can be described, but it is also about the use of the paint.
This is a very Klimt-like palette.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, but it's somehow it feels more poetic than Klimt. I don't know why.
It's hard edged.
Less. Um,
The two little spots, of red there at the feet of the tub, just make the whole thing pop.
yeah, yeah,
You don't really notice it at
yeah,
first.
yeah. But you could see how these would not reproduce in black and white. Or, I mean, they would reproduce, but they would lose a great deal. In this one, there almost seems to be something childlike in quality, and to varying degrees, that's true of his work. There's something childlike about it.
Do you think that relates to the perspective that he's,
Uh, I,
painting in?
it's a good question. I think it's the perspective, but it's also there's some kind of innocence about this that strikes me as childlike. Um, it's just a feeling, it's just a real feeling. Okay, let me just continue, and then I want to end with a particular thought. So this is the last one that I thought to show of Bonnard, And so here's my last thought, which is going to sound very funny, not funny, but peculiar. But this is the thought that I had. And it speaks to how you see things in your life. So I guess there is a Greek proverb or Greek thought that you can't step in the river twice. It's a different river. So I saw this exhibit, not with this one, but an exhibit recently at Aquavella Gallery, very, very fancy gallery. And the exhibit was super wonderful. And at one point, I looked at Renee and I said to her, you know, remember when we were first going out back in like 50 years ago, 19, almost 60 years ago, back in 1965 or 66, there was a very large exhibit of Bonnard at the Museum of Modern Art. And Renee shook her head and laughed because she knew what I was going to say. And I said to Renee, remember we went to see that exhibit? It was early on. And she shook her head and she laughed because she knew what I was going to say. And I said to her, remember when we saw it, there was a lot of extolling criticism, extolling in a positive way response to this exhibit. And she laughed and she shook her head. And I said, do you remember that we both hated this work? Okay. And she laughed and she said, yes, I do. She said, and it's pretty embarrassing. So I said that, you know, it's a good thing that your conversations aren't recorded in your lifetime. Okay. Because if they were recorded and you kept playing them back, you would realize that at certain points, you know, you were that stupid. You just couldn't get it. And it's a very interesting thing because the exhibit that I saw recently it was fantastic. And though it didn't have the same paintings, it had the same mood, it had the same artist's vision, and I really loved it. I think that's interesting, even though it makes me seem stupid, but I think it's interesting actually.
So it doesn't actually make you seem stupid. It makes you seem very thoughtful and willing to reconsider. That's a wonderful quality.
Hey, Frank, that's great that you said that. I
before
really, you're hired. You're hired.
Before we leave Bonnard, I see we're going on to the next artist. I was thinking about what you were saying regarding the cropping and the view of a particular room.
Yeah.
It's almost like they're paintings in the same way that they're like candid photographs. They're not formal presentations.
Yes.
Which is kind of interesting, given that the first picture you showed of us was a picture of him beginning to paint wearing a suit jacket and tie. And I don't think I've ever seen an artist wearing a suit jacket and tie while they're getting ready to work.
Yes, but he was quite nutty. I mean, you could see that here. I mean, this is quite nutty.
I have a question about this.
Yeah.
Do you have a memory of why you disliked it when you first saw it? What about it gave you that feeling?
Francis, this is very nice of you to ask this. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but and I'm surprised that no one else asked this, but maybe you're just freaked out or you think this guy is nuts. I think that the form in his work is something, let's put it this way. If you're used to Renaissance form, and you're used to trying to render something with a lot of volume, something that has a lot of weight and volume. And you're studying that, and you really care about that. When you look at this, if you don't yield to this, and it's sort of perplexing because it's really all color. The form is played down. And I think I had a problem with that.
Of course, floating in the bathtub is less weight. And in a way, he conveys that.
This is less weight, way less weight. This is a different weight system. So the roundness of the form is very different. But I think that over many years, my idea of art became wider. Not Mark Rothko wider, but wider in the sense of different degrees of figurative art, different degrees of reality that I found interesting. And that's why I said to Renee, remember when we saw this exhibit and we both hated it? Also, another part of this is that the first exhibit we saw was at the Museum of Modern Art. And so this exhibit he was the Museum of Modern Art's boy. Okay, he was their idea of art, and so already you would wonder about that if you were me, because the Museum of Modern Art has hardly any interest in figurative art, but yet he is a member of the club. So I just wondered about it, went to see the exhibit, and both Renee and I looked at each other and said, oh God, what is this?
I make one little comment. I didn't like.
Kathleen, isn't that funny?
Well, I was just going to say I had the same experience just seeing his work and reproductions. I think the thing that bothered me was his poor draftsmanship. But then when I saw it in person and saw the color, then it was different.
I'm only seeing a few people here, so if I called on someone, I would want to see how just not to put you on the spot, but just to get a sense of, do you think Simon is crazy, or do you think what do you think of what I said? So I wonder if I could ask Alan, if you're here, what do you think of all this?
Well,
I mean, you can say I'm stupid.
No. I mean, I think you need to have a certain sophistication to understand that this is art, because I could see a lot of people looking at this and saying, this looks like something, like you said earlier about there's something childlike about it, that it was actually done by a child. And I think you have to, you've got to be, as I said, a little more sophisticated to be able to go further, yes, into the piece, yes, in order to really appreciate it.
Yes, but I think it's great to know that you're not the same person. You didn't step in the river twice. The river is different, and you grow and change, and you see things differently, and certain things seem stronger, certain things go down, certain things go up. But
Simon,
it is amusing, actually.
Simon,
I think it's interesting the way he uses the colors. Like every square has multiple colors within it. And for me, for some reason, both the color palette and the way the paint is applied almost looks like pastels,
rather
Yes.
than
Yes.
paint.
Yes,
And
but
it reminds me a bit of Redon, a little
yes,
bit.
yes, but it is oil paint. It is
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, I know that, but I'm saying it has a feeling to me not seeing it in the real image
Yes,
of
but
pastel.
you
Simon.
could almost imagine. I'll get to you and Carol in a second.
Okay.
You could almost imagine him getting rid of the paint here. You know, getting rid of the paint from his palette every day. Carol.
Oh, I was just going to say, wouldn't it bother you more if after 60 years you hadn't changed at all?
That's another way of looking at it. That's another way of looking at it. That's very good. I have to tell Renee that. That's very good.
Simon, in the interesting time, you had occasion to paint many reclining nudes. The first time you saw it, you were how old were you?
22.
So I think you had a vast experience after that time in getting a feel for the nude form in a reclining position, in a floating position.
Yes, yes. But it seemed to me that he is a very viable inclusion with Degas' nudes, Manet's nudes, and Sheila. So that's why I thought to juxtapose these. And I also thought to admit my story, which I think is funny. I think it's amusing. Let me go on to Sheila now. So Sheila, Egon Sheila, Egon Schiele. So Sheila lives a very short life, 1890 to 1918. Okay. So this is Sheila. It doesn't look it, but Sheila fairly young. He lives
also wearing a shirt and tie.
Lives
I
in
might add.
just let me keep going. He lives in Vienna or near Vienna, and he studies at the academy in Vienna. His early work is influenced by Klimt. Klimt, Klimt. Gustav Klimt, Gustav, then Klimt. Sheila is a spectacular draftsman. So in terms of what I mentioned before about Bonnard, with Sheila, for me, love at first sight, just really struck, really thunderstruck. His draftsmanship is bursting with life, incredible and sinewy line. The line, if you just think about the line, skip the subject, just think of the line and the movement of the line. It is amazing. There was, for many years, the main critic of the New York Times was a man named John Canaday, Canaday. And for many years, maybe 20 years or more, 25 years. And he wrote a very interesting statement about Sheila, which I remember. And his statement was something like, before you think about Sheila and the sexuality in his work or the subject matter of his work, the thing that impresses is that he is a great draftsman. It's a very interesting statement. A very interesting thing about Sheila is that he is born into Austrian society. And Austrian society is, in general, repressive and uptight. So it is, I don't know, I always thought that was amazing that his work comes out of Austria. It almost seems an argument for repression. I'm joking. He produces an amazing series of drawings of the portrait and figure. And his paintings and drawings of the nude have an incredible energy and vitality. They vibrate with an electrical intensity and pulse. In many of his works, there is a sexual underpinning to them, an allure about them. His work is very theatrical and, I almost believe, narcissistic. And I think the narcissism in his work perhaps turns certain people off to it. From my point of view, it really works. If you can possibly find a video of a mixed media performance that had to do with Sheila, try to find this video, which was produced and directed and acted in by a man named John Kelly. And in the video, he recreates Sheila's life. He actually even looks like Sheila. And the video, the performance I've seen twice, but there may be a video of this. And the performance was called Pass the Blutwurst Bitte. Pass the Blutwurst, BLUTWURST, Bitte, BITTE. And it's a remarkable piece of theater. So let me show you some of Sheila's work. And I thought it related very strongly and in a different way, but related very strongly to the three artists before. So this is Sheila, 1890 to 1918. So his whole working period is 10 years, probably 8 to 10 years. This is really amazing. This is burning the candle at both ends. Amazing, 28. Oh, he dies of the Spanish flu in 1918. A number of times, the Neue Gallery, which has an exhibit that we're going to be talking about soon, presents exhibits of Sheila. And this was a blow-up photograph for an exhibit at that gallery. This is a very good museum. So he does quite a number of self-portraits, and I'll show you a few. They're very intense and very expressive and expressionistic. In the theatrical production that I mentioned, the man who is in it, who looks vaguely like Sheila, literally starts to become Sheila more and more and more until he almost looks like the walking reincarnation of Egon Schiele. Schiele had a very interesting connection with hands and the way fingers work. And he had different ways that people hold their fingers and the way they separate them. Many times they're like this, 3 and 1. Sometimes they're 2 and 2. Quite interesting. So this is watercolor and gouache. Gouache is like basically the equivalent of an opaque kind of watercolor.
I noticed in the photograph of him, his own fingers look kind of like that. They're long.
Yes, yes. He's a very interesting looking man, very dramatic. This painting, I'm not 100% sure. I didn't plan to say this, but now it strikes me that I should mention this. I believe that this painting was one of the paintings that was involved in a judicial dispute about who owned the painting. And this dispute went on for a number of years. And finally, the painting was, in other words, this had to do with the appropriation of these paintings by either the Nazis or by Austrian officials, where people were forced to sell their paintings or forced to give up their paintings. I think that this painting was in some legal dispute that went on for quite a while. And finally, it was resolved that it went to the heirs of the people that owned the painting. This one always made me think of Van Gogh. This image of Schiele. He's a very, very interesting artist. Very modern, it seems to me, but he has not lost the human psyche or the human entity. Very highly personal, very idiosyncratic.
It's his father, isn't it?
This painting, I would think, would be about 50 inches, maybe a little bit bigger, something like that. And many, many color patches put together. Again, this hands, very expressive, very strange. I think this man was a friend and an art critic. I think his name is Arthur Rossler, but I'm not 100% sure. Oh, there's a very good book that I would recommend if you're interested in Schiele. It's called Egon Schiele's Portraits, and it's by an art historian named Alessandra Comini. So it's Alessandra Comini, COM, either one M or two M's, INI. And I first came across this book when I was living and working at the American Academy in Rome. I came across it in the library there. And there were many people that were in Rome, when I was there. And I've never met people before who were composers, let's say, or I never met people who were many art historians. And so the art historians I met were I don't know how to say this, a very bloodless group of people. Uh, uh, they they didn't seem to have a life force about them, and they maybe to do art history, you have to think of things that no one else thought of. And so they would write about a corner of a church, which was really uninteresting. So I came across this book, and this book was written by a very adventurous art historian. And I think that she came from, I think she came from Texas, or she ended up teaching in Texas. And in the introduction to the book, she writes about how she had intended to write and study Renaissance art. And when she saw these paintings of Schiele and of Klimt in turn of the century Austria, she was just knocked for a loop. And she just immediately changed the direction of where she was going. And the book is written with a lot of feeling, a lot of heart and feeling. So it has lots of footnotes in it, and lots of footnotes which explain sources. But the thing is, she's so connected with the world that she's writing about. She so cares about it. And that's what came through in it. And many years later, I had the chance to meet her, this woman, and I told her about my response to this, and she seemed very, very pleased. So this is interesting. Schiele dies at 28. His sisters live to be 80 or 90. And so in this book, Alessandra Comini footnotes many conversations that she had with the sisters when they were 50, 60, 70, 80 years old. And so it struck me as scholarship with a real heart, with a real feeling and heart. And that's what I felt was missing when I met people who were, I couldn't sense that, but I sensed it with this book. So I recommend this book very much. This is another painting of Schiele. I think this painting is located in Minneapolis at the Minneapolis Institute of Art. And the man that he does the painting of has an interesting name. His name is Paris van Gütersloh. Very interesting name. And the pose is so interesting. What he does with this pose and why he chose this pose strikes me as amazing. Paris, Paris, van, small v, O-N, and then Gütersloh, Guterrsloh. Oh, and his first name is Albert. Albert Paris von Gütersloh. And you can see this same way that he paints, where they're like shots of different paint and color. Here's a close-up of this. It's very intense, very like charged up. I mean, this is not minimalist. this is really out there. Okay, here's another one. Well, now that we've had various conversations about composition and Japanese art, I don't know if all those things influence Schiele, but the composition is very striking. So Sheila does a number of images of the nude. I thought to start with this one. This painting is owned by the Neue Gallery, and it's usually shown there, but it's not, I don't think it's there now. It's a very, very striking painting.
It was there in the gallery last Friday.
Oh, great, great.
Did they allow you to take this picture?
No, it's not a picture that I took.
Okay.
But did they have it on a wall that had brown wood?
It was above the fireplace in the west dining room.
On the second floor.
Yes.
Okay, I don't like that location. They should take it away from that location. That location, you see this painting this is slightly light, this color in here. The painting is, oh, now this is better. The painting is deeper and richer, but it's on a wood paneled wall. The wall is a deep brown from the wood, and the wall, the color of the wall doesn't allow this to breathe, in my opinion. This color is much better. And if they listened to me, they would paint that wall, which is wood paneling, white. But this is a striking painting and very beautiful composition and very weird and intense.
The woman has no head, or it's gone through the floor.
Yeah.
See her hair though. Oops.
Yeah.
So she's.
Let me keep going. So the line in his work is very, very strong, and a kind of almost dance-like quality, very expressive and stark.
This almost has a cubist kind of feel to it.
Yeah, yes, I would agree. I agree with you. I agree with you.
You know in what year this painting was made?
I'm gonna just guess 2015.
1950.
I'm sorry, 1915. Yeah. This is an example of one of many drawings that he does. And the drawings are very fresh, not rendered. And they make use of drawing in pencil, crayon, and watercolor and gouache. There are many of these drawings. They have an immediacy about them that is stunning.
When you say not rendered, what do you mean?
Okay. Okay, so not rendered is a term that I have. So it would have to do with the opposite of rendering. So then what is rendering? So rendering is making the form turn, making it round, drawing it so it's palpable, drawing it so that it has weight, so it turns. And when you're a student, you learn about rendering. You learn how to render the form. And rendering is something that you can teach, actually, because it's a way of understanding the way light hits the form and the way the form turns in light and dark. Okay. But rendering isn't really art. Okay, rendering is something else. It's not necessarily art. It's a technical thing. So rendering you do from your wrist to your hand. It's like that, like that. Okay, it's a technical thing. So these drawings of Sheila, to my mind, are not rendered. In other words, they are immediate. They don't have a feeling of the form turning. They don't have a feeling of the weight that you get. They have a feeling of a pulsing line. And for want of a better word or a better expression, I would say that they are not rendered. They rely on another attack mode for an artist. Anne-Marie, does that sound like you get what I'm saying?
I'm trying to. I understand what you mean by his line and very fresh. Yeah, I do. I am relating to it in that way. Comparing it to maybe, but yeah, you say the turn, but I see that she is turned. So I don't quite understand.
No,
It does seem to have weight to me because that the top leg is on top of the bottom leg.
But it's a different way of seeing form. It's if you looked at Raphael drawings or Leonardo drawings, the drawings are done, many of them are done so you feel a roundness. You feel the light hitting the form and the form turning, and then there's a reflected light and the form completely turns by this Renaissance idea of form. This is a different system of rendering. Okay, this is highly personal. It's not based on a rule. Okay, the reason that the rendering in that older system can be taught is you can show someone the way light hits a form, the way there's a middle tone, the way the form completely turns, the way there's a reflected light. And if the student gets what you're saying, they can use shading to get the form to turn. Okay? This is different. This is not, he is eliminating what he has been taught. So here's another way of thinking about this. If you look at earlier drawings of his, the drawings that he did at the Academy in Vienna, those earlier drawings are based on the system I'm describing. The form turns. So this is a revolt, a revolution away from that. Okay? But he has not just revolted, he found a system which is right for him. Okay? It's one thing to have a revolution, it's another thing to find a very good outlet for that revolution. That's different. That's a higher destiny. That's a higher destiny. And I think that he achieves that. So your question is great. It really pulled from me to describe it.
One of my teachers would have called rendering reporting.
Yeah. In other words, rendering would be like maybe a little bit like journalism. Okay, whereas the art is in the X. The art is in the X. Okay, the art can't be explained, whereas rendering can be explained. That's why it can be taught. I can give you the sentences to understand it, but with this, I have trouble.
Can I just say?
How about that?
Sorry, Simon.
Is that good, Anne-Marie? Good. Kathleen, your input there is great.
Can I just say something?
I'm going to put. Wait a minute. Just hold on a second. I'm going to put you on the spot again, Alan. Am I saying this well, Alan?
No, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean,
Okay.
I guess one can argue that in this one, there's some slight rendering in the arms, which, but the lines really overtake them.
Yeah. But I think Kathleen's point is a very good point. In other words, it's
can I just
it's like what you see
throw a comment in?
What you see in a newspaper is not expressive, really, in terms of reporting or a photograph. You need something else to bring it to art.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Couldn't you say
Peter?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but in describing rendering, wouldn't it be right to say that you're capturing volume more than you say the thing is turning? I mean, would that describe it any better?
Yes,
maybe.
Yes. But the thing that's interesting about Sheila is that he goes through this apprenticeship from, say, 16 to 18, and he learns this. Okay. So you look at these early drawings and you can almost not understand how he leaps to this.
This is a kind of apotheosis of the commercial artist, the techniques that were taught in order to render clothing for newspaper advertisements in the days before halftone photographs were used.
Yes, but I mean, people use rendering to create their expression. Okay, if their expression enters a world that is mysterious and enigmatic and full of art, fine. If it doesn't, it stays in rendering. Okay, that's my opinion. Let's go on a little bit. I want to make sure I finish this. Okay, so I think that this painting is called Death and the Maiden, and I would say this is probably about 65, 68 inches wide, and this is full of the world of Egon Schiele and of a certain period of expressionism. I am very struck by all these works. So I'm a convert. If you're not, you're not. Don't worry about it. But I just really respond to his work, to the heart of it.
So,
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say you mentioned Klimt early, and
yes.
This has a very it is not at all like a Klimt, but I have the feeling of Klimt when I see this, and I can't figure out why.
Yes, Klimt. Actually, the work of Klimt, to me, is much stronger in person. And there was an exhibit that was held at the Museum of Modern Art, and it was called Vienna 1900. And there was a room or two rooms of Klimt in this exhibit. And they were very, very strong to me, even though I never really related that much to Klimt. But seeing them in person, I must say they were very strong. Klimt seems sweeter than this. This is very tough, very acidic. And well, let me show you another one. He
what is this one called?
he does many of these drawings. And maybe about 50 years ago, his work was not as well known as it is now. I mean, really not. And these drawings, which are striking, could actually be bought by people, middle-class people, lower middle class, middle class, and so forth. They are really expensive now. And they're very unique kinds of drawings, almost like he plugged in some electricity, and there's an electrical thing going on in the drawing or the painting.
So what medium was this done in?
Again, I think it's crayon or pencil, and then watercolor and gouache. Gouache is sort of like an opaque watercolor.
So the lines are crayon or pencil.
I think so. Yes, I think so.
Do you have the title of this piece?
I don't. No. There are many books on Schiele. The book that I mentioned is a book on his portraits. Oh, we saw this one already, and I think these are repeats. These are repeats. This one is a photograph I came across of a film on Schiele in which the pose duplicates a Schiele painting. And so this is the painting.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's an amazing.
It was very, very theatrical, and many of these self-portraits, one could say, is quite narcissistic, but very full of life.
What do you mean by narcissistic?
Interesting composition. What?
What do you mean by narcissistic?
Looking at himself, something like that. Plus looking at himself. But I think some people pull it off. Okay. And for some people, it's annoying.
Like Donald Trump.
Okay. So,
yeah.
So
I wasn't going to bring him up, but.
Thing is, Simon,
let me just finish. Kathleen,
no.
I think for me, Frida Kahlo is very narcissistic. Okay. But she is a real narcissist. She pulls it off, to me. But people have difficulties with that.
I'll have to think about it.
Okay, good.
You mean because so many of her paintings are of herself?
Wait a minute. Hold on. Sue?
Well, I was just going to say, this photo has a great tenderness, and the lines are very smooth and curved. All of his double nudes are very kind of grotesque almost in the positions, and very angular.
Yes.
And the opposite of tender in a way.
Yes. He's almost daring you to respond. He's at you.
Can I just say something about Frida Kahlo? Because she's one of my favorite artists, and I feel that her self-portraits are a lot about pain. And since she had that accident, so I don't see them as narcissistic as much as delving into her painful existence for so many years. And she was very self-deprecatory in her paintings with a mustache and the unibrow. She was a gorgeous woman, but her paintings are caricatures of herself. So I'm not on board with that particular description of her art as narcissistic. On the contrary, I think she was really being. I'm sorry.
Introspective is what I hear.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
I'm not saying it well enough. I'm saying that this is what other people say, that this is their misgiving about her work, that it's very narcissistic.
Correct. Yes.
So I would say I would
self-referential.
What?
She is the subject, but it needn't be pathological in its narcissism. I think one has to make that distinction.
But all artists draw from their own experiences and themselves, even if it's not a portrait of themselves. It's just a representation of whatever they feel inside. That's what they put on the canvas, I think, if it's a good artist.
Well, I'm trying to be flip and making a kind of joke about this, where my sense is that if she is narcissistic, she's a real, an honest narcissist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's just an attempt at humor. I mean, I love her work. She's you missed the class last week, and I was talking about seeing exhibits more than once, and she was an exhibit that I saw 5 times. So,
right.
You know, I really respond. There's only 3 left.
Keep going. Yeah.
So this one.
Great.
See, I don't like that.
So it is extraordinary that he does this all between the age of 18 or 20 and 28. This is getting your money's worth times 100 or times 10,000. I think he does this painting. His wife is pregnant. He does the painting in anticipation of the birth.
That's a bit Lucian Freud, the man.
Yes, definitely. And I think he and his wife both die of the Spanish flu. I don't know about the baby, but the baby didn't exist when this painting was done.
Right.
So this is the last slide of Sheila.
It's one more.
So this is Egon Schiele, believe it or not, at 28. I guess we have time for like 1 or 2 questions or thoughts, if anyone has any.
Simon, do you know if the Nazis went on to condemn Schiele's work later on?
I don't know about that.
I think it was.
He was a degenerate artist.
Yeah.
I don't know because he wasn't around. I mean, I just don't know. But what I said before had to do with the forced sale of the art by the Austrian government or
it was Nazis.
German government, and the restitution of these works of art. And that is a very interesting, there's some very interesting films on that. And
Actually, yeah.
I mean,
Lauder,
it's a very interesting thing.
Lauder, who created the Neue Gallery, has in a number of instances helped with the the families and bought the paintings from, or bought the paintings from them after they were granted the return of these paintings by the government.
Well, I think
so
this is all we have. I think this is all we have time for tonight. But I think that the painting of a woman, I can't remember the name of the painting, but it's like the most important painting in that museum. It's a woman standing.
Woman in gold.
Yeah, it's the woman in gold, the Klimt. Yeah.
Woman in gold. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that painting was
right.
part of a restitution idea. And,
yes.
and it was then returned to the heirs of the woman who is actually the woman in the painting, returned to her heirs, and the heirs, I think there were 5 paintings, 5 works, and the Lauder bought that painting, or he bought it from auction.
That's the subject of that film.
Yes,
Right.
Yes, but there's another film which I haven't seen that one, but there's another film which describes from the Austrian angle what took place, and it deals with the law and the legality of it. It's a very interesting film. If I can figure out the name of it, I'll bring it next time.
Okay.
Well, the paintings of Adele Brock Bauer, I think, are the ones that are in question, right? Yeah. The portraits of her, multiple portraits that are considered priceless today.
This is one of them, the one that I'm mentioning. That's one of them. And that already was litigated. And he bought that painting, I think, for $125 million.
Oh my God.
So in other words, he encouraged the woman to get the painting back. Then the woman sold the painting to him. Quite a story. Mm-hmm. In any case, for next week, please, from now till in the next few days, send me the 2 pictures that you're going to write about or speak on. And my suggestion is to send the pictures, first one on the left, second one on the right. So you are going to send me 2 pictures, and I'm going to put them on left, right, left, right, left, right. The first one I get will be on the left. The second one will be on the right. Okay. So anyway, I think we've accomplished a lot tonight, and I feel very good about your questions and responses, and I'm sitting at my wife's computer, which I'm not familiar with, and all went well.
Yeah.
So next week is I'm sorry, go ahead, Rita.
Oh, thank you. I saw 2 things on Amazon Prime Video today when I was trying to escape from the relentless news, and you might find them interesting. One was Modigliani, and the director was Mick Davis. The star of that was Andy Garcia, and it was a docudrama, I would say, about his life. Oh. The other one is Manet and the Birth of Impressionism. The director is Voldemar Januzak. And that was just a documentary about Manet's art. Oh, and they were very private.
The second one, very good.
The Birth of what?
The second one was very
Manet
good.
And the Birth of Impressionism.
So you liked?
Yes.
Good. I can only comment
The next,
about the news. It is very distressing and depressing, actually. And you would think that this kind of thing was over about 75 years ago, or something like that, or longer than that. And it's very disturbing, and it's hard to know what should be done. Um, on that jolly note, I'm going to leave you for this evening. And
writing is
Thank you.
next week. We are we with our photos. We can either contribute, send the writing to you, or just have the writing for the presentation.
But you can send the writing to me, but what I really want are the 2 photos.
Right.
Okay. But we'll be reading as we did last semester from the writing.
Yeah.
For next week. Okay.
Good.
Okay.
Does anyone have a question about that?
I just, did you say you wanted the 2 photos sent separately, not on the same?
No, just send them on one email with 2 images.
2 images on 2 separate attachments.
Yeah.
Or one.
And you could say this one left, this one right.
Okay.
Okay.
From one of the 4 artists we've seen.
Thank you for your questions. They were very good.
Thank you.
I hope I answered them or got you to think about them.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. I really like your input.
So Simon, can you send all these pictures that you've shown today in a separate email where you did the Manet and the Degas?
I think I sent that yesterday. I sent it yesterday or the day before.
Yeah, they were all in that one email.
Yeah.
I didn't get any of these.
I'll send it to you, but I sent it out yesterday. Lucy, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're picking two of the 4 artists we've seen so far.
2 of the 4.
Oh, I see. Okay, but you're not sending the rest.
No, I'm going to send. I sent you yesterday.
Get out of here.
And I
Get out of here.
I was able to get
viewing.
I can't understand you.
Exit.
There's too much.
Exit.
Okay, I'll send it to you, Lucy.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night,
Simon.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you for this, Simon. It was great. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a great class.
Great.
It really was. Thank you.
Really, I care about it, so thanks.
Thank you.
Those Bernards were amazing.
Love it.
So, yeah. Okay. See
See
you
you
next
next
week.
week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Simon.
Okay. Nice hearing from you, Frank.
Oh, didn't want to take up too much time, though.
No, you did great. You did great. It was really fun.
Oh, great. Thank you, Simon.
Take care.
Say hi to Renee.
Thanks. Hey, Renee. Yeah, how do I end the recording? I don't know how to do it.
Did you record it?
Sure I did.